This week on TIAA Bank Jaguars Weekend, the Jaguars escaped a hostile environment with a much-needed win. The focus now is on the Atlanta Falcons and adding to the win column. We visit the Cadillac film room with head coach Doug Marrone to get his perspective on the Jaguars' organizational changes. And
what's your name? Noraya.
We get in the Christmas spirit with Leonard Fournette. All that and much more ahead on Jaguars Weekend.
This is TIAA Bank Jaguars Weekend. TIAA Bank, created to serve, built to perform. And Geico, 15 minutes could save you 15% or more on car insurance. Visit geico.com to see how much you could save.
Obviously, they know that, Coach was let go last evening and that you're going to get a lot of questions on it. I sat there and answered, a bunch of them. But I want to remind you of one thing. Our focus is on the Atlanta Falcons. We have to win.
Doug Marrone has no choice but to completely focus these next 2 weeks on winning football games. Hello and welcome to TIAA Bank Jaguars Weekend. I'm Ashlyn Sullivan. The Jaguars are now without an executive vice president of football operations. Tom Coughlin was relieved of his duties earlier this week. It's been a crazy couple of days, but the Jaguars have to concentrate on what is most important, beating the Falcons in Atlanta.
34 seconds to play. Down 3. Showing Glacier coming. Gardner drops the throw, fires to the right side. That ball is caught. Touchdown, Chris Conley. Touchdown, Jacksonville.
Finally, the 5-game losing streak is snapped. This team never gave up, even during the most difficult times. That's what made the victory in Oakland even sweeter.
I think it's kind of a testament to, the guys believing in each other. I think a lot of times, when that kind of stuff happens, you can get down. You just say, it's not going to go our way today and just give up on it. But we didn't. Kept plugging, found a way there at the end. And I think there's some stuff we can take from that and help us move forward.
Adversity either tears people apart or brings them together. This locker room is closer than ever.
Throughout all these weeks and things like that, just the adversity we faced, and just to know that we kept pushing through it and just to come out with a win, it just brought us that much closer because we saw a lot of heads down. We seen what was going on and people didn't give up. We didn't give up on each other, and that's what made it even better.
Improvement is the focus in the final 2 games, but the thing that matters most is winning.
We're all fighting, for our jobs, for our life, really. That's what we do as coaches. We all know that. That's what the situation is. No different for the players. They have the same thing. So again, it's a tough situation, but you have to keep your focus and you have to lead and you have to go out there and do your job.
Much more football to discuss as we bring in Brian Sexton and John Ozier, and thanks to Subway for bringing us lunch today. The recent news of Tom Coughlin being relieved of his duties, we knew change would most likely be coming at the end of the season, but at least for me, I didn't expect it to come this week.
Well, I don't think he expected it before the NFLPA stuff came out this week. I think Shaw was pretty clear in his statement. He had decided to make this move at some point during the season, and it's clear that the NFLPA stuff lit the fire under it, accelerated, whatever. Happened 10 days before it was going to happen anyway. I think Shad looked at it and said, if it's going to be a perception that this is not a player-friendly organization, then the cause of that perception has to go. I think Shad acted quickly.
Well, it was the last line of the letter that said to players, consider your options before signing in Jacksonville, really got the ball moving on this one. And, I'd heard that Tom was considering retiring at the end of the season from people that are close to him. The truth of the matter is Shad couldn't let it get there. He had to make a much more definitive statement than the NFLPA by saying, Tom, we're removing you and replacing you. Thank you. He had to do that.
Because he had to say, Brian, that's not what this organization
Exactly. He had to go counter to that.
Doug Marrone has made it very clear the focus now has to be these next 2 games. Sunday's game being against the Atlanta Falcons. Gardner Minshew will be the starting quarterback. We said that these next month or so, he needs to prove that he can be the franchise guy. What does he have to do going forward to accelerate that process?
Well, I wonder if he can. I don't think he can nail down the job going into next year because I think there's too many unknowns. There's too much you don't know about what the offense is around him. He's working his way into the conversation. I don't think he's locking anything. And, Brian, I'll be honest, I have more trouble figuring out what this kid's future might be than I've had on a player in a long time. There's one week I think this kid might really have something, then I'm not so sure. I don't know.
Well, and there's a lot of people that don't know. Now, most of the fans love his style, love the way he plays the game, but a lot of football people have questions about the arm strength, about his willingness to stand in the pocket and make throws. You're going to have to be able to do those sorts of things. And then I think the other element is Nick Foles' contract, because the dead money hit says he's going to be on the roster. There's no way the owner wants to accept that kind of money. And his salary is $22.5 million. Well, $22.5 million on the bench? I mean, you have to take all those things into account. Plus, he only started 4 games this year. And if Doug Marrone is going to be the head coach here this year, I can't imagine that he isn't going to say, I need more time to look at Foles as well as Minshew.
I think that'd be a clean slate for both. I don't think they'll
in open competition, he's worked his way into that for sure.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely.
One guy who definitely supports Gardner Minshew is running back Leonard Fournette. After the big win in Oakland, Fournette Instagrammed this picture, beard times the stash. Let's head to our Baptist Health feature this week. Number 27, getting in the Christmas spirit with the Boys and Girls Club.
It's a holiday, you know, I have kids of my own. Miles doesn't have kids, so he doesn't know that feeling of seeing your kids smile when you give them presents and things like that. So the biggest thing is giving back, and it's joyful. Huh?
Oh. Obviously, we're blessed with so much, and the profession that we're doing, we're able to do so much. So the least we could do is give back to some kids that truly deserve it. You know what I mean? I put in the work, and we feel like it's the least we could do. So to give them a bicycle, a day of joy to go get something they want, I feel like it's a small thing, but it'll put a smile on their face.
Coming up, we're continuing to count down on the Jaguars All-25 list. Next up is a Hall of Fame talent who is basically uncoverable. Plus, Doug Marrone visits the film room to talk about what's next for the Jaguars. Straight ahead on TIAA Bank Jaguars Weekend.
That's the only thing guaranteed in this business is change, especially when you don't perform like, we're capable of performing. Change happens a lot faster, a lot more often. So, obviously, I have a lot of respect for Coughlin.
Players understand the NFL is a business. Everyone is doing all they can to keep their jobs. Welcome back to TIAA Bank Jaguars Weekend. I'm Ashlyn Sullivan. We're nearing the top on the Jaguars All-25 list. Next up is a player who holds every receiving record in franchise history. You can make a solid argument wide receiver Jimmy Smith should be in the Hall of Fame. For now, he's number 3 on the top 25 Jaguars of all time.
The Jaguars All-25, presented by Sharpie.
Number 3, Jimmy Smith.
I recently Googled best wide receivers not in the Hall of Fame. And up comes Andre Rison as one of them. Are you kidding me? Are you kidding me? You're going to put this guy in the same league with Jimmy Smith? Who the hell wrote this?
Fire Smith's got it at the 40. Smith inside. There he goes. He's across midfield. It's a foot race. 40. Smith 30. Smith 20. Smith 10. 5. Touchdown. 65 yards.
Has a bit of time now being chased. Lance throws. He's looking downfield. He's got a receiver. And it is caught. Jimmy Smith at the 5. Into the end zone. Touchdown, Jacksonville.
Now turns and throws a pass. Touchdown, Jacksonville. Guess who? Jimmy Smith.
Wide receiver Jimmy Smith was a dominant force for the Jaguars for 10 seasons. He holds every major receiving record in franchise history.
There was a 3-year span where Jimmy Smith was as good as anybody who ever played the game, including Jerry Rice. You look at that 3-year span of numbers, Jimmy was unbelievably good.
As far as a football player, man, oh man, this guy was Hall of Fame material.
Now coming down the near sideline, looking for Jimmy Smith, and Jimmy makes the grab. Touchdown, Jacksonville.
Jimmy Smith is a Hall of Fame talent. He was darn near uncoverable.
The 5-time Pro Bowler had 9 seasons of at least 1,000 receiving yards. Big plays were Smith's specialty.
Fires the slant. Jimmy's got it this time. 35, 30, middle of the field, 20. He's going to the 20-yard line. He's going to score. 10, 5. Jimmy Smith, touchdown. Turns and fires it down. He's got an open wide receiver. The catch is made. There goes Jimmy Smith down to the 20. They won't catch him at the 10, the 5. Jimmy Smith, touchdown. 70 yards.
He could beat you vertically, easy, all day. Mark Brunell said if anybody pressed Jimmy, it's game over.
He was so physically strong and fast that he never had to go into the middle of the field because he could win outside consistently because he was strong and he could run by people.
He was a guy who, if you sent him deep, he was going to be open. The question was your quarterback going to see him or have enough time to get the ball down the field? Because Jimmy Smith was open every play.
Drop, pressure coming, turns and plants. He's looking for Jimmy Smith down the sideline. Smith gets behind the coverage, makes the catch! Touchdown, Jacksonville!
Smith was part of the greatest era of Jaguars football. They made the playoffs 4 straight seasons, including 2 AFC Championship game appearances.
Looking for Jimmy in the end zone. Touchdown, Jaguars! Touchdown, Jaguars! Touchdown, Jaguars!
I think Jaguar fans will remember him with Keenan and Mark and Tony and that group. That era, we may never see an era like that again.
An offensive is going to be great. It has to have a receiver that if you don't take him away, you will lose the game. If you didn't take Jimmy Smith away, if you didn't try to defend him in a unique way, then you were probably going to lose against the Jaguars.
12,000 yards. It's a milestone. We plan on getting it at home.
Pressure coming, steps up, steps, turns, throws. He's got Jimmy, first down 20. There he goes, 10, 5, touchdown, win, Jacksonville.
Later in his career, off-the-field issues somewhat clouded Smith's legacy. But recently, he has turned his life around.
I'm incredibly honored and humbled to be inducted into the Pride of the Jaguars today.
In 2016, Jimmy Smith was inducted into the Pride of the Jaguars, cementing his legacy in Jacksonville.
I know Jimmy Smith had his issues off the field, and I root for that guy more than anybody that I know because he's really, honestly, he was one of the nicest players that I've ever dealt with.
Who are we to judge, when people have problems with demons or so, but he'll always be remembered as one of the best in franchise history.
Jimmy Smith is the 3rd best Jaguar of all time.
He's going for Jimmy in the end zone. Touchdown! Touchdown! Jimmy Smith down the sideline. Touchdown! Jimmy Smith!
Coming up, we visit the film room with our very own Jeff Lageman and head coach Doug Marrone to talk about changes in the organization. That's next on TIAA Bank Jaguars Weekend.
He told us today after practice, it's been a lot of distractions that we couldn't control this year, and he definitely commended us just always staying together, staying focused, not turning against the coaches and vice versa. And, he's showing how good of a leader he is. He's making sure even while we're not in the playoff run, we're still motivated to go out there and motivated on Sundays to go out there and play.
Despite all the adversity this season, Doug Marrone still has been able to rally his team. We're back on TIAA Bank Jaguars Weekend. It's been a crazy week and a challenging season for the Jaguars. At the center of it all has been head coach Doug Marrone. He's had to deal with many unpredictable situations, but still has managed to keep the locker room together. Let's visit the Cadillac film room with our very own Jeff Lageman and the head coach to get his perspective on the big news of the week.
Boy, Doug, challenging week, to say the least, and the big news, obviously, that Tom Coughlin was let go, and I've been around Tom. I have all the respect in the world for Tom, and I know you do too. It's always tough to say goodbye to somebody.
Yeah, it's a tough situation, and when you're not having the type of season that you want to have, and someone obviously has been relieved. Whether it's players or whether it's coaches or whether it's benching, whatever it may be. It's never really one person's fault, and so we all have to own up to our faults in obviously a very disappointing season.
The address that you would have or have had with the team is obviously incredibly important because so many different distractions can come about from something like that. How challenging has it been to focus the team back on football?
Well, unfortunately, we've had a lot of incidents, that have occurred, during the course of starting with OTAs to, all the way through the season. And I think that obviously in those times you look for obviously strong leadership. So I've always tried to be up in front of the team, be able to be out there to make sure that everyone understands what our job is and what our focus is, and knowing that if we don't do that, then we're not going to be, in this great league in the NFL.
I give you credit. I was a player rep for many years. I was a vice president of the union, and with what the union came out with their stance and their statement, for you to be able to keep a football team together through some of that, I give you credit. That's not easy.
Well, obviously I was a member of that union, and even though I didn't play long with 2 accredited seasons, I was on strike and didn't cross the picket line. So I understand how the union is, and I've always been making sure that our players knew the rules where, hey, you want to make sure you understand what the collective bargaining agreement is. You want to know all the rules. I've always presented the rules to our players because I've always felt like don't wait till something happens and then you need the union, okay? So I've always had this great relationship with them, and Kevin Mawai was the president, obviously when I coached them.
Who's a good friend of yours.
Obviously, yeah. I mean, a really good friend, and Pete Kendall. So I had a lot of people, Drew Brees, all on the executive committee. So I understand how it works, and for me with the players is that we've got to work together to try to find a common ground and what's fair. And I think that over the last year, especially over the last year, we have worked together and we've solved a lot of these issues that are coming to light right now.
This week against the Atlanta Falcons, a lot of people are going to want to talk about all that's happened during the week. And for a football team, a lot of times playing the game is kind of a reprieve. It's that little last bastion of just peace for a player.
Yeah, I agree with you. I always felt that as coaches and players, where there's peace is when you're in that meeting room where you can, I don't want to say control the message, but you can streamline the focus of where we need to be when you're on the field, when you're playing, because it's really pure during those times. Nothing's going to jump into your head, nor it should, of the distraction. So, constantly reminding the players that, listen, your performance is going to be based on how well you do during the week is obviously a message, and what can we do today to help ourselves have a great performance on Sunday, and those are the things that we're really sticking to right now.
Enjoy the peace, Doug.
Great, thank you.
Thank you, Doug.
Up next, we discuss how the Jaguars can get their 6th win of the season, next on Jaguars Weekend.
Jaguars Weekend is presented in part by TIAA Bank, created to serve, built to perform, and Geico. 15 minutes could save you 15% or more on car insurance. Visit geico.com to see how much you could save.
Close right. Middle. Hey, close left. Where the back at? Come on, I see you.
Donald Payne mic'd up in Oakland. A big win for the Jaguars as we bring back Brian and John. This team is out of playoff contention. They have no shot at a winning record. But if you were in that locker room, you realize what a big deal that win was. Why was it so important?
Well, I think it was big because these guys are still fighting. I think they still believe in the head coach. I think they'd still like to have him stay. I guess there's some element of that. Think about it. If they win their last 2, Brian, 7 and 9, and all of a sudden the narrative around here becomes what a great job they did holding things together in a weird season. Not just the weirdness of recently, but the weirdness that started off at the beginning of the season.
When they were 4-4, headed to London to take on the Texans, we talked about what a nice job Doug had done walking this thing through the tumultuous time. If he wins his final, I think there's a really strong chance he's here anyway. Mm-hmm. But I think if they win their final 2 games, then he absolutely comes back. Mm-hmm. So from a continuity perspective, from a player's perspective, all those things matter. Don't underestimate this. Winning feels good.
It does.
I mean, they've been so long since they felt that way. These guys are fighting for jobs and position as well. So winning is important at all times.
Mm-hmm. Falcons coming off a big upset over the San Francisco 49ers. What does this team have to do to go into Atlanta, get get their 6th win of the season.
I think you got to get some breaks early because the Falcons are good, and you're not going to be, or not necessarily breaks, you have to score early.
Yeah.
Because you're not going to be able to let this wait until the 4th quarter to get 2 touchdowns and stay in this game. Somehow they've got to start faster.
You're right. First quarter touchdowns. Gardner Minshew's last 3 starts, the offense has produced 3 first-half field goals. That allowed, by the way, the defense allowed them to stay in that game in Oakland. If you fall behind to these guys, you're not going to come back. You've got to find a way to make plays in the first half and keep it close.
Alrighty, Jaguars looking to keep that winning momentum going forward in Atlanta. We'll be back next week on the next Jaguars Weekend.
I'm telling you, boy, hey, with the dudes in this locker room, ain't no game over, ain't no season over until we say it's over. Let's go. Nobody I'd rather do it with. Hey, Jags on 3, Jags on me. 1, 2, 3.